What would you do if the person who gave up everything to protect your world was secretly breaking into pieces right in front of your eyes, and you were too blinded by your own battles to notice? Imagine standing at the peak of corporate success, holding all the power in the world, only to realize that the one person who gives your life meaning is slipping away into a sea of unspoken pain. CEO Jack stood under the dim, flickering light of the old farm gate, his breath catching in his throat as he watched Tu Tien. She sat alone on the wooden porch steps, her shoulders trembling, holding a crumpled piece of paper that threatened to destroy the fragile peace they had fought so hard to build. What did that paper contain, and who was the shadow lurking at the edge of the farm, watching their every move? The answers would either bind them together forever or tear them apart completely. The silence of the countryside was heavy, suffocating the warmth that usually filled the farm. For weeks, the shadows of Jack's past corporate life had been creeping into this sanctuary, brought by mysterious strangers whispering at the edge of the property and threatening messages left by the old gate. Tu Tien had carried the weight of it all, choosing to shield Jack from the growing danger so he could focus on resolving his final business crises in the city. Jack stepped out of his sleek black car, his expensive leather shoes sinking slightly into the damp earth of the driveway. He didn't look like a powerful CEO tonight. His tie was loosened, his jacket draped over his arm, and his eyes were lined with exhaustion. But as his gaze landed on the porch, his own fatigue vanished, replaced by a sharp, twisting ache in his chest. Tu Tien was sitting with her knees pulled tightly against her chest, her face buried in her hands. The soft yellow light from the kitchen window illuminated the tears escaping through her fingers, glittering like broken glass. She thought she was entirely alone. She thought no one could see the crushing toll that the constant threats, the cruel rumors from the city, and the fear of losing him were taking on her soul. A few feet away inside the kitchen, Anna peered through the curtains, her hands gripping a dish towel, her face pale with worry. Anna wanted to step out, to comfort her friend, but she stopped when she saw Jack's shadow lengthen across the yard. Anna held her breath, waiting to see what the powerful man would do now that the illusion of their perfect farm life was shattered. Jack didn't rush forward. He froze, his heart hammering against his ribs as a wave of intense guilt washed over him. He had been so consumed with legal battles and board meetings that he had missed the subtle signs. The way her smile didn't reach her eyes, the extra hours she spent working the fields to distract herself, the long silences during dinner. He realized then that Tu Tien was sacrificing her own peace, enduring humiliation from his past associates, just to keep his sanctuary intact. She was breaking, and it was entirely his fault. Tu Tien suddenly lifted her head, wiping her eyes fiercely as she heard a branch snap in the wind. She quickly shoved the crumpled note into her apron pocket and forced a tired, practiced smile onto her face, looking around to ensure no one had caught her weakness. When she saw Jack standing in the darkness, her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of panic crossing her features before she tried to mask it with warmth. "Jack? You're home early," Tu Tien said, her voice cracking slightly despite her best efforts. She stood up, brushing off her skirt, trying to act as if she hadn't just been weeping in the dark. "Have you eaten? The kitchen is still warm. I can heat up some soup for you." Jack walked toward her slowly, his eyes locked onto hers, refusing to let her hide behind her selflessness any longer. He didn't answer her question. Instead, he stopped just one step below her on the porch, looking up at her with an intensity that made her breath hitch. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything they weren't saying. "Why didn't you tell me?" Jack asked softly, his voice trembling with an emotion he rarely showed the world. He reached out, his fingers stopping just short of her cheek, hesitating as if he were afraid she might shatter. "Why do you always carry the heaviest burdens alone, Tien?" Tu Tien looked away, her bottom lip quivering. "It's nothing, Jack. Just a long day at the farm. The harvest is demanding and—" "Don't," Jack interrupted gently, taking her small, cold hands into his large, warm palms. He squeezed them tightly, feeling her tremble. "I saw you. I know about the people coming to the gate. I know about the letters. You don't have to protect me from my own life, Tien. You are the one who needs protection, and I have failed you." Tu Tien looked up, the walls she had built up over the past few weeks suddenly crumbling. A single tear rolled down her cheek, but before she could speak, a sudden rustling in the bushes near the old gate made them both freeze. Anna gasped from the kitchen window, her eyes wide as a dark figure moved quickly along the tree line, disappearing into the night. The threat was real, it was close, and it was watching them. Jack's grip on Tu Tien's hands tightened, a fierce, protective fire igniting in his eyes. The fragile calm was officially over. The next morning, the farm was enveloped in a thick, cool mist that clung to the green hills. The sun had barely begun to pierce through the horizon when Jack quietly slipped out of bed. For the first time in his life, he didn't reach for his tailored suit or his smartphone to check the morning stock markets. Instead, he pulled on a simple, faded flannel shirt and a pair of worn jeans. He walked down into the small, rustic kitchen, the floorboards creaking softly under his weight. The kitchen was usually Tu Tien's domain, filled with the aroma of fresh herbs and brewing tea by the time anyone else woke up. Today, Jack was determined to change that. He rolled up his sleeves, his hands, usually meant for signing multi-million-dollar contracts, awkwardly gathering the ingredients for Tu Tien's favorite morning beverage and a traditional breakfast dish she loved. Anna walked into the kitchen 20 minutes later, stopping dead in her tracks at the sight before her. Her jaw dropped, and a look of pure comedic disbelief crossed her face. The high and mighty CEO Jack was currently covered in a light dusting of flour, staring intensely at a frying pan as if it were a high-stakes corporate negotiation, his brow furrowed in deep concentration. Anna covered her mouth to muffle a laugh, her eyes twinkling with amusement and relief. She leaned against the doorframe, crossing her arms, thoroughly enjoying the rare spectacle. "Are you trying to cook, or are you declaring war on the kitchen utilities?" Anna teased in a loud whisper, nodding toward a small stack of burnt toast in the corner. Jack didn't look up, his attention entirely focused on flipping a delicate pancake. "It's a strategic operation, Anna, and I am currently winning, despite the minor casualties over there. Don't wake her up yet." Anna's smile softened, her eyes turning warm as she watched him carefully pour a perfectly measured glass of fresh fruit juice, Tu Tien's absolute favorite. "She didn't sleep well last night, Jack. She kept waking up at every sound. She needs this. She needs to know she's safe." "She is safe," Jack said, his tone turning fiercely serious as he set the spatula down. He looked at Anna, his eyes reflecting an unbreakable resolve. "I am going to make sure of it, starting today." Just then, slow, hesitant footsteps echoed from the stairs. Tu Tien walked into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes, her hair slightly messy. She stopped instantly, her eyes widening in sheer bewilderment as she took in the scene, the messy counters, the flour on Jack's cheek, and the beautifully arranged breakfast tray sitting on the wooden table. Jack immediately stepped forward, intercepting her before she could look at the mess or try to clean anything. He gently placed his hands on her shoulders, his touch warm and grounding. The chaotic energy of the kitchen seemed to vanish, leaving only the two of them in a quiet, protected space. "Good morning," Jack said, his voice deep and incredibly gentle. He guided her toward a chair, refusing to let her stand. "Today, you are not the caretaker of this farm. You are not the person who fixes everything for everyone else." Tu Tien blinked, looking up at him in confusion. "Jack, what is all this? The fields need to be watered, and the market orders." "The fields will wait, and Anna has the market covered," Jack said firmly, glancing at Anna, who nodded enthusiastically in agreement, giving Tu Tien a reassuring thumbs up. Jack leaned down, looking directly into Tu Tien's eyes. "Chi jian qua m verst m nin ji chu. Ruri. Hum ne, m kung chi ji. Si ji ti chi, ha yi ji an chi tim shi ti, ha yi ji jiam shi ti, ors ki ti di. You've worked so hard for everyone lately. Today, you don't need to do anything. Just let me take care of you." The sincerity in his voice struck a chord deep inside her. Tu Tien looked at the breakfast tray, then back at Jack's flour-dusted face, and for the first time in weeks, a genuine, beautiful laugh escaped her lips. The heavy cloud that had been hovering over her features finally began to lift, replaced by a radiant warmth that Jack realized he had been starving to see. By mid-afternoon, Jack had completely cleared their schedules, ignoring several urgent phone calls from his city assistants. He took Tu Tien by the hand, leading her away from the bustling main yard of the farm and toward a hidden path that wound up into the emerald green hills, far from the worries, the chores, and the lingering anxiety of the past few weeks. The path opened up into a breathtaking, secluded xie, a rolling hill covered in vibrant tea bushes overlooking a crystal-clear mountain stream that rushed over smooth stones below. The air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of wild earth and pine. But as they reached the crest of the hill, the sky began to shift, the bright afternoon sun hiding behind a blanket of heavy gray clouds as a sudden, chilly mountain wind swept across the landscape. Tu Tien shivered slightly, her hands instinctively wrapping around her arms as the sudden cold nipped at her skin. Before she could even register the chill, Jack was already moving. Without a single word, he slicked off his heavy, warm jacket and wrapped it gently around her shoulders. He pulled the collar close around her neck, his fingers brushing against her skin, ensuring she was completely protected from the biting wind. "Jack, you'll catch a cold," Tu Tien protested, trying to shrug the jacket off to give it back to him. "You're only wearing a thin shirt." Jack caught her hands, preventing her from moving the jacket. He forced her to look at him, his gaze steady and unyielding. "I don't care about the cold, Tien. My only priority is making sure you are warm, always." He led her to a smooth, dry stone bench overlooking the valley, pulling her down to sit beside him. The wind howled around them, rustling the leaves of the tea bushes, but in Jack's arms, Tu Tien felt an overwhelming sense of security that she hadn't felt in a very long time. Jack looked out over the vast expanse of the valley, his expression turning solemn, carrying the weight of a mature man who had finally realized what truly mattered in life. "When I was in the city, I thought success meant controlling everything," Jack began, his voice dropping to a vulnerable whisper that was nearly swallowed by the wind. He turned his head to look directly into her eyes, his expression raw and completely unguarded. "I thought if I won every corporate battle, I could protect this life. But I was wrong. While I was fighting enemies out there, I left you alone to fight the ghosts here." Tu Tien's throat tightened, the raw honesty in his words piercing through her remaining defenses. "I just didn't want to be a burden to you, Jack. You have so much responsibility on your shoulders. If his past partners come here to ruin you because of me, let them try," Jack interrupted fiercely, his hand moving to gently cup her face. His thumb tenderly wiped away a stray tear that had begun to form in the corner of her eye. "Di ko chuyen ge shi wai ra du the gashi and gla ikea ko fuk tai pi the neo the v the tree xuan treeing and the trong long onga trong long onga tree la gushuan lo om la m ong nu in dai im fi kok hai chu in kol in na in na in na sol in na in na." No matter what happens, no matter how complicated the world outside is, the most important place in my heart will always be yours. I don't want to see you cry or suffer alone anymore. The words hung in the air, powerful and absolute. Tu Tien stared at him, searching his face, finding nothing but pure, unadulterated devotion. The deep-seated fears, the nights of loneliness, and the bitter humiliation she had silently endured from those who judged her farm background suddenly melted away, completely destroyed by the warmth of his declaration. A profound peace washed over her. She didn't need a grand speech or a promise of a lavish city life. She only needed to know that she wasn't alone in the storm. Slowly, deliberately, Tu Tien leaned forward, resting her head gently against Jack's broad shoulder. She closed her eyes, letting out a long, shuddering breath as Jack wrapped his strong arm around her waist, pulling her impossibly closer. As the wind continued to blow around them, they sat in perfect healing silence, two souls anchoring each other against the world. As evening approached, the temperature dropped further, and a soft, steady rain began to patter against the tin roof of the main farmhouse. Inside, the dining room was a stark contrast to the cold weather outside. A crackling fire burned in the hearth, throwing a warm, amber glow across the large wooden dining table, which was laden with steaming bowls of homemade food, fresh vegetables, and hot soup. The entire farm family had gathered for dinner. Jack's mother sat at the head of the table, her sharp eyes observant but filled with a quiet satisfaction as she watched her son. Anna sat across from them, still occasionally snickering whenever she looked at Jack, who had finally managed to clean the flour off his face but still looked entirely out of his corporate element. Throughout the meal, Jack's behavior was completely different from the distant, preoccupied man he had been over the past month. He sat right next to Tu Tien, his attention entirely focused on her well-being. Before he even touched his own plate, he carefully selected the best cuts of meat and the freshest vegetables, gently placing them into Tu Tien's bowl. He anticipated her every need, pouring her warm water before she could ask, his actions fluid and completely natural. Anna, unable to resist the opportunity to tease the notoriously stern CEO, leaned forward with a mischievous grin. "Wow, Jack! I didn't know a corporate boardroom taught you how to peel shrimp so perfectly. Are you trying to audition for a new job as Tu Tien's personal chef?" The farm workers around the table chuckled softly, and even Jack's mother hid a small smile behind her teacup. Tu Tien's cheeks flushed a deep, beautiful crimson, and she gently nudged Jack's leg under the table, silently begging him not to take the bait. Instead of deflecting or making a joke, Jack laid his chopsticks down. The light-hearted atmosphere at the table shifted instantly as a powerful, commanding stillness settled over him. He didn't look angry, he looked profoundly resolute. Slowly, Jack reached over and took Tu Tien's hand, lifting it above the table so everyone could see his fingers intertwined tightly with hers. He looked around the table, his gaze lingering on his mother, then on Anna, and finally on the loyal farm workers who had protected this place. When he spoke, his voice was clear, resonant, and filled with an absolute authority that brooked no argument. "Anna is right," Jack said, his eyes turning back to look at Tu Tien, his expression softening into something incredibly beautiful. "From now on, my corporate titles don't matter. The business deals don't matter. Te chi tri I vi ich quan tri I vi chi I ci con la lam. Tu Tien. CICE she T. From now on, my most important job is to make Tien happy." The dining room fell into a stunned, emotional silence. The teasing smiles vanished, replaced by looks of profound respect and deep emotion. Tu Tien stared at him, her heart overflowing, her eyes shining with unshed tears of pure happiness. She could feel the absolute truth in his grip. He wasn't just making a romantic statement, he was drawing a line in the sand against his past, announcing to the entire world that she was his future, his ultimate priority, and his greatest treasure. Jack's mother set her cup down softly, a warm, approving smile gracing her elegant features as she nodded slowly. "It's about time you realized what's truly valuable, Jack. Take care of her." Anna wiped a theatrical tear from her eye, giving them both a genuine, loving smile. The tension that had plagued the farm for weeks completely evaporated, replaced by a deep, communal warmth. As the rain continued to wash over the dark farm outside, the light inside the dining room burned brighter than ever. Jack squeezed Tu Tien's hand, and as she smiled back at him, he knew that no matter what storms the future might bring, they would face them together, anchored by a love that had finally found its true home.